International Master Kostya Kavutskiy. I hope I said that right.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, perfect.
Nailed it.
Blindfolded.
Right.
Where's your blindfold?
I need a
You just put
Hood.
your hood
Yeah, the hood.
You want me
like,
to do the hood?
promote
I
the
can do the hood.
ChessDojo merch.
it's up to you.
Can you like
I
put
mean,
a chest bag over your face?
just put a plastic bag over it. No. Okay.
Suffocate yourself.
Yeah,
You want me to do
the left door. Okay. Or take your glasses off and just.
Yeah. All right.
That might be easy, right?
I mean, I can see without my glasses, but yeah, I'll cover my eyes.
Okay.
Is this good?
Yes.
All right.
And moving the pieces for Kostya. It's the one and only Eric Rosen.
Hey folks, how's it going? So I was recently in Las Vegas for the 2023 National Open, and while I was there, I had a chance to play a fun blindfold blitz game against a friend of the dojo, KDlearns. Now, unfortunately, as you guys saw, we actually didn't get to record the full game. For whatever reason, the camera just stopped working. Right as the game was about to begin, I had my hands ready, covering my face. Eric Rosen was there making the moves. And yeah, very sad, but we lost the recording of the game. But I was able to remember the game. It wasn't too hard. I kind of reconstructed it the next day. And it was a pretty interesting and fun game. So I figured I would share it with you all now along with my thoughts. I think KDlearns is also going to do a video on his channel about his thoughts on the game. So definitely go check that out as well. But yeah, I figured I'd share my thoughts as it was a pretty interesting game. So it started off with d4. I was playing white, and a couple things. I actually hadn't played blindfold chess in quite some time. In fact, I think it might have been a couple of years since I've even played my last official blindfold game. I do a lot of blindfold analysis, and I can hold the position in my head. But yeah, it's been a while since I actually sat down to play a game. Especially, I don't even remember the last time I played with a clock, because we were playing a blitz game. It was 5 minutes plus 5 seconds increment. And yeah, I honestly wasn't sure how I would do. It's the end of the tournament. We just finished the final round. I'm tired, but okay, it seemed like fun. And yeah, figured win or lose should be a cool experience. So here I'm playing white. I decided to go for the Trumpowski. I just wanted KD to be kind of thinking on his own as quickly as possible. I feel like the longer the game goes on, the more chances I have of losing the position. And if you lose the position in blindfold chess in a blitz game, it doesn't matter what, how many rating points you have over your opponent, right? You're gonna start making some terrible blunders. So I was trying to put some pressure on him out of the opening. He goes c5, d5, knight e4. Very sensible approach here from black. I drop my bishop back all the way to c1. This is kind of a theoretical move. The point is to just defend this pawn in view of any kind of incoming queen b6 and get the bishop out of the way, and then maybe even play f3, e4 to chase the knight and get some space. So black played d6. I think it's a reasonable move, c4, and he goes g6, indicating he wants to play kind of King's Indian. So I played f3 here, knight f6, e4, and essentially we transpose into a normal King's Indian position where white has kind of played the f3 variation, the same-ish. And I was actually totally fine with this. I feel like this is a pretty sharp choice and could give me some nice attacking chances. So bishop g7, knight c3, castles. I went bishop e3. And yeah, I would say at a certain point, black should probably play e6 in this kind of position. Better sooner rather than later. The point is black needs to open up some lines for the pieces, and after take, c takes d5, we'll get this kind of Benoni position. Black will get the open e-file for the rook, can start playing for some queenside counterplay, and it's a very, very normal position. Instead, KD played knight bd7, which I would say is a pretty typical mistake for King's Indian players. They kind of put their knight on d7 by default and then start thinking, but this can be a problem because I played queen d2 here, and now it's actually hard for black to play e6. Now if you play e6, white can take, and because the knight is on d7, the d6 pawn is hanging, and now it's kind of hard for black to get this pawn break in. I think queen d2 is actually not the best move. If I had this position in a classical game, I would probably go for knight h3 here, taking advantage of the fact that the bishop on c8 is blocked, and then white can bring the knight to f2, where I think it would be quite well placed. But anyway, queen d2, I'm playing blindfold chess. At this point, I have the position pretty steady in my mind because the structure is very familiar and nothing crazy or weird has happened, that would cause me to kind of lose track of the pieces. Now knight e5 is played. Definitely kind of an annoying move because the knight is hitting c4, so I can't go like knight g2 as I would want. And I do have to watch out about the f3 pawn. And here's where I kind of just made more or less a practical decision to just kind of go for it. I played the move g4. So f3 is, of course, still defended by my knight. I had to make good sure of that. And now my idea is to kind of play like a Yugoslav English attack kind of thing, where I want to play bishop h6. I want to go h4, h5, and play for the kingside attack. And I would say this is a very, very risky approach. If black defends well, I think white could end up just completely overextending and getting a terrible position. But because it's a blitz game, I'm playing blindfold, I'm trying to win, especially I'm trying to win quickly. I figured I got to take some risk here if I want to be able to pose some problems and win the game. So Kevin went a6, which I think is a very reasonable move, trying to set up some counterplay on the queen side with rook b8 and b5. I just think it's interesting that black could already probably just play b5 like this, just sack the pawn, and play in Benko Gambit style, like c takes b5, a6. The point being that once white kind of starts extending on the king side with f3, g4, making all these weaknesses, it's definitely in black's best interest to just open up the queen side, even at the cost of the pawn, but get the second rook to b8, and black's counterplay here is going to be very, very fast. So this would definitely be quite an aggressive approach. But okay, black played a6, which I think is pretty reasonable. I went a4, trying to hold off on b5 as long as I can. Rook to b8, and now bishop e2. I think I was a little indecisive here, but I just felt like the bishop on e2 is going to be very useful. In general, just controlling all of these squares and kind of playing against that knight on e5. And now bishop to d7. Very reasonable move. Again, black wants to play for b5. Here I was basically choosing between h3 and h4. I decided to go with h4 to just kind of keep going with the attack full steam. I think if I had more time, or if I had this in a classical game, I'd probably actually just go h3, which poses some very serious problems for black because h3 defends g4 and now threatens this f4 push where black's knight on e5 is caught in the middle of the board. And yeah, if black doesn't notice this threat, then white could just be winning a piece outright. Although, still it should be said that the position is probably going to be super, super complicated, for a blindfold blitz game where pieces start flying around and it's very, very easy to lose track of stuff. So black could play like b5 here, for example. I would take twice. Then I'm still threatening to play f4 to trap the knight. So black would definitely have to figure out what to do. But even if the bishop drops back and creates a square for the knight, that position white has some extra material, but is not going to be super straightforward to just convert. So still would be very, very complicated game. Anywho, I went h4. Just going all out for the attack. I want to go h5, bishop h6, and hope for the best. Black played e6, very sensible move. Now he's finally getting his counterplay in the center. I went h5, can't really stop now. E takes d5, c takes d5, and now b5. And yeah, this made a lot of sense, and I would say that black is definitely better in this position. Generally, if white's kingside attack is going to be successful, it's because the center is closed, black doesn't have a lot of counterplay. Here the center is very open and black has tons of counterplay, which means that white's kingside attack, I would say, has little chance of working if black defends well. Still, once you say A, you have to say B, so I just kept going, trying to play confidently, bishop h6, pretending like I have everything under control, knowing full well that if black finds the right moves here, I'm just going to be totally busted. Now, main thing I was kind of considering for black was this move b4. I thought this was pretty logical. I would go knight d1 back, looking to eventually bring the knight over like knight e3 or knight f2. And after something like, let's say, takes c4, black definitely has tons and tons of counterplay. And the problem with the knight on e5 is, let's say if I try to take and do the typical attack on the h-file, black can go knight h5 here, and then if takes, I really don't have anything. g6 is not working, the knight is just easily covering the square, and white's just down material and doesn't have a lot to show for it. So I would definitely have to be a little bit slower here. For instance, maybe I could try a move like knight h3 in this position, looking to bring the knight to g5. And then this would maybe still pose some serious problems for black. It certainly wouldn't be easy to play this position perfectly. That said, I felt like this was kind of best play. I think b takes a4 is also a pretty serious move, just opening up the rook and making it very difficult for white to leave the d2 square with the queen. But I was pleasantly surprised when black played knight to c4, which feels like a very reasonable move. It's like attacking white's queen. It forces white to give up the bishop. But I actually think this one is a pretty typical mistake. And you often see it not just in like King's Indian positions like this, but also in a lot of Sicilians, like Sicilian Dragon and the Najdorf. You see black spending a lot of time with this knight, trying to get it to c4. And then white, which has only moved the bishop once, can just take on c4 and save a lot of time by trading off this piece. And then after bishop takes c4, bc4, it feels like black lost some of their counterplay and lost the knight on e5, which was a very, very good piece because it's both active and served a lot of good defensive roles like covering the king side. So I was definitely happy to see this. Now I also get to kind of continue my attack. So I go hg, fg, bishop takes g7, king takes, and I come in with queen h6 check. I would say at this point I still had the position pretty clear in my mind. Like I understood, okay, I'm getting queen h6, I have g5 coming, and to me it looked like a pretty strong attack. I was definitely expecting king to g8, and my first instinct was definitely to just play g5, and on knight h5 sack the exchange and play for g6. That said, looking at this like after the game, black can just go queen e7 here, and this would by no means be clear. If anything, black is probably better with the extra exchange and king side defended. So I'm not sure what would have happened. Hopefully I wouldn't just rush in with g5, because I don't think that would be the best move. I feel like white has better options. Analyzing the game, maybe castles here would be quite reasonable, just defending the b pawn and getting ready to bring the other rook into the attack as well. But okay, it's much easier to analyze the game when you don't have like 3 minutes on your clock and you're not blindfolded and you can use an engine, right? A lot of advantages after the game to find the best moves. Anyway, KD played king f7, which I can kind of understand. I think he was just worried about potentially getting mated on the h7 square, wanting to give his king more room. But now after g5, the problem is if the knight moves, then white is crashing through with queen takes h7. So now knight h5 is really not going to be good. White can take first or take here. Let's say knight g7, maybe play for some rook h6 kind of ideas. Here, okay, it's not working. g5 needs to be defended first. But definitely this would be, I think, a pretty reasonable attack for white. Probably I would take, I think this looks more promising, and then take like this and start going after black's king, which, yeah, looks like it's very much going to be getting mated soon. So after g5, black tried rook takes b2, which I think actually was definitely a very good practical try, especially given the situation. I can't see the board. You know, I might start losing track of the pieces soon. Of course, I realized I'm hitting the knight, so I took on f6. And then very, very surprising move here, king takes f6. Definitely I was expecting queen takes. We talked about this a little bit after the game. I think KD mentioned he was worried about something here. But actually this position would be pretty unclear, especially because we're about to get into time trouble. The knight on c3 is hanging, which I did see. I would have played rook to c1 here and then continued the game. Maybe queen takes h7 next. And okay, white's a piece up, but definitely still a lot of work to do. It's not like black is getting mated here super quick. So I would still have to keep track of the position and eventually convert it. But after king takes f6, I kind of immediately spotted the right move. I think just intuitively, I knew what I had to do here. Might be an instructive moment if you guys want to pause the video and kind of think for yourselves what white should play. But once I saw the move, I pretty much knew it was right, and it was just a matter of maybe just calculating a few lines to make sure I knew what I was doing. But yeah, e5 here definitely felt very, very intuitive. Opening up the e4 square for the knight on c3, which desperately wants to join the attack. And yeah, because it's a very forcing move. Black just has no time to defend here. So d takes e5 was the game. In case of king takes e5, I think white has a lot of options here, like queen to g7. But during the game, I believe I wanted queen e3 check, which kind of forces the king to go back. I was thinking king f6, knight e4. Then basically all I saw was that on king f7, I'm getting rook takes h7 in, and this looked good enough. And if king g7, I got queen h6 check, and then queen takes h7, and this looked like mate as well. And in fact, it is very good. After king f7, rook takes. If the king goes back to g8, there's simple move queen h6, and yeah, black is just getting mated here. So this would have been quite good for white. Instead, black took with the pawn, but now knight e4, white just gets this beautiful coordination, king to e7. And yeah, funnily enough, white actually has a forced mate here after queen to g5 check. And I definitely considered this move, but I just didn't calculate it all the way through. So king e8, knight d6, that's a nice mate. And then if king f7, rook takes h7, wherever the king goes, white has knight d6 again, or queen takes g6, and it's just game over. But I had seen a different way to win, and so I didn't want to spend a lot of time looking for the mate when I felt like I already found like a forced way to win the game. That said, I still had something like 2 minutes here, so probably I could have been precise. But I went queen g7 instead, because I had seen that, okay, king e8, knight d6 is again mate, so rook f7 is forced. I can take this one with check. King f8, I get this one with check. King e7, and I saw I was getting d6 here and winning the queen. And when you win the queen, you know, it's hard to look for better, right? Especially in a fast game. So I thought this was good enough. Black played king e6. I took here, and then KD went for a funny Hail Mary. He went rook takes f3. And I'll be honest with you guys, I totally forgot that the knight was on g1 in this position. Yeah. So in my mind, it's like I think I had pretty much everything. When I'm thinking about a position blindfold, it's rare that I just see like the whole thing at once. Usually I'm kind of seeing like little fragments and chunks, and I kind of understand like where the pieces are generally. So I'm pretty sure I saw like I can take here. I have this check. I have like knight g5 and this one as well. So I was aware of like most of the pieces, but yeah, I just totally forgot like my knight on g1 never moved, and it's still covering this f3 square. So of course knight f3 would have been the simple choice. I instead decided to play queen e7 check, knowing that this was good enough. King to d5, and here I went knight f6 check with the idea to just pick up the bishop or even play like queen e4 at some point. After the game, Eric chastised me for not going castles here, which I totally agree. I missed this move. I didn't realize this was possible, and would have been a great way to kind of end the game, going after this rook. But yeah, knight f6 I felt like was good enough. Black played rook takes f6, queen takes f6, and in this position, KD ran out of time. We're playing 5 minutes, 5-second increment, but of course, you know, all of Black's pieces are gone, and yeah, honestly, I definitely wasn't like 100% clear like where everything was, but I feel like I had enough of an idea that I probably would have been able to finish the game. Like I knew I still had both rooks on the board. I knew that this guy was here and bishop on d7 was here. So I feel like I knew pretty much most of the pieces and where they were, except for this knight. I probably just forgot about this knight. But all right, I would have slowly kind of won all the pawns and hopefully eventually been able to pick up a mate. So yeah, that was the game. Definitely not a quality game, you know, on my end. I gave Black a ton of chances, but I thought it was a pretty interesting game. You know, I definitely went for the practical approach of just playing for the attack and putting a lot of pressure on the opponent, putting them in a position where if they make 1 or 2 mistakes, you know, the attack could just break through and allow me to win the game. But I think KD played really well, you know, given the circumstances, a lot of pressure, and clearly had a lot of chances in the game to create a, you know, counterplay and make it a very, very big fight. So yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Sorry again that we didn't have like the actual video of the game. It was a lot of fun. There was a bit of banter as well, a bit of KD asking me questions, trying to, you know, distract me during the game while I'm trying to keep the position steady. Eric as well, doing a bit of kibitzing too. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'll definitely try to get some more blindfold games in as well, because I think they're super cool and a great way to train your visualization. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this video and this recap. That'll be it. I will catch you in the next one. Take care.